Hey, everybody, welcome to the Kenpo Minute. Back with me is Master Marty Zaninovich, ninth degree black belt in American Kenpo, and a student of many, many different types of arts. So, in our previous conversation, we were talking about assessing students, both as an instructor and the student assessing the instructor. So, vice versa. It's a communication thing. There's some goals, some ideas. Communication is the number one thing. So, now I want to talk with Marty about the idea of the seriousness of what the martial arts is. Right now, Marty's in the process of getting ready to release a book, and he'll tell us more about that when it's available. I'm very excited. We haven't had any books on this subject in some time, especially from the Kenpo community. So, Marty, let's look at it. I'm just going to use a broad brush. This is not the ultimate, but I was talking about before. There is real life street fighting. Anything goes, no rules. Then you have commercial karate, where you can have different facets of competition karate. You can have light, medium, full. You can do simulated multi attacks and whatnot. You can do by yourself, which is called katas, or you can do shadow boxing with an opponent. So there's all that, and then there's Hollywood. Now Hollywood is what a lot of us are introduced to when we see Bruce Lee movies or the 80s blood sport movies with Van Damme or a Seagal movie and whatnot. And the most recently is the introduction of the John Wick franchise, and there's 4 of them out. And I always get a kick out of it. The one thing I say here it is, he's showing how he's proficient in weapons use, and that's pretty wide. I mean, everything is in there. I mean, this guy knows it all. He knows how to do takedowns, jujitsu, striking, etc. But the most important one I thought was when he said, "Who can kill with a pencil? Who can kill somebody with a pencil?" So you got to talk about. So Marty works very hard with Danny Asano, Filipino martial arts, Salat, Asu, others, and he's very, very knowledgeable, and he's still growing every day with the use of weapons. So let's talk about real life. Okay, you have real life situation with a confrontation, and guy pulls out a knife on you out on the street. You work on it in the school with simulated fighting experiences, but that's more oriented toward learning and maybe understanding what it is. And then forget movies, because movies is all choreographed. We know that. For those of you who don't hear breaking news, it's all fake. Okay, people get hurt there, but they have got this where they've been working for months on these scenes, so these fighting scenarios are that. So let's take that and put that aside. Let's deal with what's the reality of the street with weapons, Marty. Make us understand.
Weapons on the street are rough. I mean, it's any way you want to formulate it, it's not going to come out with a good result. Number one, in the States here, guns are still the number one culprit, and that's including suicides too. But I mean, deaths from a firearm. The next in line is going to be from a bladed instrument, which could be a knife, it could be a screwdriver, it could be a lot of different things, or blunt instruments, and that's falling right in second place, right behind the gun. Now, empty hands are a problem too, but they're rating down a little bit lower on the scale. But it's still an element that has to be addressed. So going back to what the problems are with weapons on the street. Number one, a gun. You don't have to be up close and personable to really do the gun, but you have to be aware that there's going to be a consequence on it, and you probably go to jail for it. And that's just the way it's going to be. With a blade is up close and personal, and it changes things. I mean, and with a knife, there's so many different ways to look at it to address this question. Number one, it could come in stealth and you die, and that's more of the assassin type method, which, we're not condoning that at the point. We're just talking about the different types. If you get the other type person, pulling a knife and brandishing it just to hopefully scare you away, that's probably one of the biggest mistakes that he made. If you're thinking you're going to detour an attacker, if that attacker does have a knife, then you've got a double problem going on. And if he takes it away from you and uses your knife on yourself, you've got even a bigger problem. A lot of times when an attacker jumping around now pulls out a knife, to an unarmed person. I mean, you do have, and what you said earlier about the pencil. A pencil can be a weapon, your belt can be a weapon, your scarf can be a weapon, pens, keys, a multitude of things. You could pick up things that are laying on the ground. If there's a bottle, if there's a cup of water or hot coffee in your hand, you know, that can be a deterrent also to give you the chance to exit as quickly as possible. A lot of times when a guy pulls out a knife and starts waving it around Hollywood-wise, they generally want something. There's no guarantee that's going to be true. And you have to take it in your mind that, number one, the best thing is to de-escalate the situation by talking it, exiting one way or another. And if you have to fight, hopefully you'll have some empty hand skills that are going to be from a qualified instructor that's going to really put you in a better position than you would have. More than likely, you're going to get cut.
What kind of attacks are more prevalent than others? And for the layman,
I think a lot of times with the knife, they're slashing away to keep you away from them.
Okay.
You know, I see that a lot. Now, the reports that we get from the ERs and the trauma centers are more from a plunge, more of a thrusting type motion with a knife, because it can do more damage. With a slice, depending on the blade, if it's really sharp, or if the guy, situational awareness again, has a jacket on or has something that could buffer that slice, it could give you that little bit of breath you need. So that's one. So you'll have that. The ice pick grip, you have to be closer on that, and that's when the blade's pointed down, just like you get an ice pick and hammer with it, or you know, that's another thought on that too, which could be, you know, it could come in from the side and still be just as deadly, you know, with the thrust on it. With a gun, you know what the gun's going to do.
Okay, I'm going to cut to earlier we discussed some things about the mindset. Okay, if you follow a little bit of Ed Parker's 8 considerations and you're aware that bad things are out there, you look at your environment assessment, you look at range, you look at your weapons, you look at things for you and exit strategy and whatnot. What should be the first concern? I mean, mine would be, hello, wake up, be aware what you're doing when you leave the sanctuary of the building or the car, going to the other building or the house, whatever it is. That time between that is when you're the most vulnerable, because your assailant is going to attack you at that. And that would be the first thing I would think you'd be thinking about, looking around. If you uncomfortable, you know what? Get back in the car. Lock the door, or get back. Lock the door.
I'm in total agreement, and we'll take it just by steps.
That's
awareness,
just a general.
You're 100% correct. If you're not in the moment and being aware, you're absolutely right. Stay in the car, drive away. If you have that luxury, if you don't, then you've got another problem. You could be on a public transit system. You could be stuck somewhere. So then you have to start looking at, where am I going to be the safest? Is there a lot of people around this area? Did I pre-plan my route out prior? A lot of the basic things that are taught in just a generic type self-defense class, but we can elevate that and really give it a lot more meaning, because what you stated, awareness is key. If you're not aware,
you're dead.
Wake up.
Okay, so my idea is this. One, we talked earlier with Marty about assessing the proper instruction. Not everybody is qualified to teach weapons, defenses, and such. And everybody teaches all these bizarre things you see all the time on Hollywood, you know, which could be YouTube and whatnot. And that's scaring me, because these people are going off half-cocked, thinking, oh, I just got this, I'm never going to get cut. I know I'm big bad karate guy. Well, guess what, big bad karate guy? There's young, good, talented people that have died because they intervened and they made a mistake. And I know Marty knows what I'm talking about. Key factor here is, though, you better understand that this is no nonsense. This is where I'm going back to. Street fighting is really no nonsense, because somebody is threatening you to injure you in some degree, whether it just a punch, a black eye, a broken nose, or he's going to stab you with something in the gut to get what he needs because he's desperate. Mindset of that person is he's crazy. It has to be. When people are pushed to a level of emotional distress where they have to use a weapon to make sure that you comply with them, to give them what they need, you're not dealing with the same person. So don't expect a training scene right then. Am I right on that?
Well, you are right, and you're heading down the right path on this. A lot of it could be with a blade coming in. When you get into a knife fight, it's the intent to do harm and possibly, eliminate that person, that target, without a doubt. When that blade comes out, there's no off button, there's no ammunition that needs to be reloaded, and it's live, it's ready to do some lethal damage. And then it becomes the intent of the user, on that. A lot of times, and you're right, in the street, it could be gang related for a multitude of different reasons. Maybe that's their initiation, that they have to
Yeah,
utilize a
that's what I
knife
was
and go
thinking.
plunge somebody, so that's part of it. The other one is, maybe it's you're thinking that that's going to be your self-defense. If somebody does draw a knife on you because they want to rob you, they want something like you stated earlier, from that altercation. So it's definitely something that needs to be looked at and understood, because you don't know that mindset, but you do know is where you're headed, and you try not to. I shouldn't say you don't have to, because sometimes you get stuck into it, but you really have to be aware of that situation of where you're going, and try not to travel, by yourself. A lot of times there's a lot of basic things that come into play there, but when it comes to a street altercation, you don't know. I mean, it's going
Okay,
to sneak up on you and bite you hard.
I'm going to jump on you right now. I only
Do it.
have an hour with you. Okay. What should be like my points, like bullet points? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, no, there's bad things going to happen. So when you put yourself out of your sanctuary, or you're where you feel you're comfortable, you better be understanding that. What do you do? What are your checkpoints? What can you help that somebody can carry along with them? And this can also roll over into just regular attacks. But who's most prevalent to get attacked? Who's the most, what's going to happen? The most unsuspecting, probably elderly. You know,
These are broad questions. I mean, so there's no real
I know that.
definitive
I'm
one
asking.
point there.
Just what
If
you're
you're
thinking.
walking down the street, you want to stand out. Thanks. If you're walking down the street, you definitely want to stay in a well-lit spot. Number one. Number two, you want
Bring
to
your own
assess.
flashlight.
Bring your own flashlight. I had a group want me to help promote flashlights, for self-defense. Which, I mean, it's you probably could get away with a little bit. But number one, you want to assess where you're going. If you're going to the rough side of town, expect you're walking into a hornet's
Don't
nest.
go. I mean,
Don't go.
there's no
Don't
reason.
go.
Go pick a time when it's really more appropriate. You know,
If you happen to walk down the side street and you take a wrong turn, you're in Manhattan, you could end up being where you don't want to be. I mean, just because of you getting turned around, and there you're going to have a problem. You have to be aware that things could come out of the darkness, and you don't know it's going to attack you. So you have to be alert to that. And those are going to be unfortunate situations. I mean, they really are. That's when it comes back to, you better have some training of some type to be able to at least buy enough time to get out of there. If you got a whole group on you, you got a problem.
well, okay. So our first thing is the mindset is understanding where the conflict is. This is not a game. Something bad's going to happen. Let's do an assessment on, you know, what about not worrying about the assailant with the weapon? What about you carrying? Are there certain weapons that are appropriate or are legal to carry versus ones that are not?
That depends on the region, the area.
Give me a general. I mean, okay, we're in California. I'm in Nevada. A general
You know
idea.
what? You have to check with the local authorities on that, because each one of them have a different scenario on that. You could have a folder on there, 2.5 inches or less. But
Right.
in the same thing, if you're not used to drawing that knife, you've got a problem there, because somebody comes on you and you're sitting there, hold on just a minute, let me get my knife out. Or if you try to fumble for it and you're not in tune with it, shame on you. Why even carry it? A cop can still put you at blame for having a weapon on you for that, and it can be claimed as self-defense, or you're calling it for self-protection. There's no law to justify that. You're still going to get detained and probably booked on that. So we're told the academy, it's better not to carry a knife and put yourself into that position. You've got to really be aware of that. But you have other weapons on you too. If you have a computer bag, you use that. If you have a belt, you use that. If you have, like we talked earlier, coffee, pen, you have something that's not going to get you in harm's way of going down and getting arraigned.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important that people look into it to assess this. A better, longer, deeper insight in this would be, folks, when Mr. Zaninovich's book comes out. It'll give you a very in-depth history and the evolution of the knife, how it's used and whatnot. One thing is known now, anybody can pick up a knife. Not everybody carries a gun, but anybody can pick up a knife. And when they start to ban knives, we're going to have a problem, because you're going to be eating Easter dinner, any holiday, you're going to be eating with your fingers. And Mom,
well, you're right. You're right. And they have tried to ban knives, and it ends up being tough. I mean, in the UK, they have no guns. So the knife play now is jumped up even more tremendously higher than normal. And you're right. Most everybody has picked up a knife one time in their life or another and utilized it. The big difference is the intent of how they're utilizing that blade. But it is available. It's readily available for you.
I do look forward to seeing your next seminar on these subjects. And now here's another thing. This is brief. Is there anything? Okay, we've talked about worrying about the situation where you may be attacked. We talked about the situation where you have been attacked, the types of attacks that may come on. There is resulting injuries. Expect to be injured. That can happen. But we didn't talk about one thing, and I brought this up to you once before. What immediately should you do if you are stabbed? Once you find out you've been stabbed and you're bleeding and you're not dying yet, what can you do?
That's always the major question. It depends on the situation, obviously. Just because you're stabbed, sometimes you won't even know you're cut. And I'll share a story real quickly with you. And there's one of the ER guys that I trained with, and he was in a trauma center up in Toronto, and he had a patient come in. He said, "Man, I got a gut ache and a half," and he says, "It looks like bloody around his shirt." So set him up on the table and cut it. And as soon as he cut his shirt, his bowels spilled out. He got knifed real bad, and he didn't die. Obviously, he had to go into immediately go into surgery to get fixed on it. But if you get stuck in a situation that you're in a street altercation, you can generally, depending where the intended target was at, you're not dead. That's number one. You're not dead, and you need to keep going, because if you stop, that attacker is going to continue plunging you, slicing you. Something worse is going to happen, because he'll see that he's in control, and his mindset may be that he's not going to stop. We call it wound management, and there's sometimes you can take care of it. There's sometimes you can't, depending on how mentally tough you are. And to be in that situation, you got to be mentally tough, and you got to hope that you did not get cut in a vital area that you're going to bleed out before you're able to do anything or lose consciousness.
Would you try to put a compression on it? Would you try to? How would you at least minimize it to even get to some kind of emergency treatment, a phone or whatnot? I mean, I'm trying to think of.
Well, there's
don't panic is the number one thing you're saying.
Well,
don't panic.
You try not to panic, but number one, you're still in the confrontation, and if the guy didn't leave, to put a compression on it and still try to defend yourself, you're going to be hard for us.
I'm thinking after the whole encounter is done.
When the encounter is over, you assess where you're bleeding, and you try to compress it the best you can. There's several ways of doing it, which we're not going to get into right now, but there's several ways of trying to maintain consciousness, to get you to the emergency room. It's a tough one.
Well, I would think that you would not want to remove the instrument from where it's bleeding, because as soon as you do, all of a sudden.
I'm glad you can cut that part out.
Okay.
No, but
I'm having fun with the Hollywood side, okay, folks?
Yeah.
But more likely, really serious business. And Marty takes this very he takes this literal, and he's actually talking in your best interest. This is something that's spent over 20 years with Danny Asano. So, and he has a long history also in Filipino martial arts and etc. And so you're talking to one of the most qualified senior instructors in the martial arts today. He's well-rounded. He's not old. He's just well experienced. Okay? He can't be. He has a. How old is your
being
son?
kind.
9? He's 9.
11.
Right? 11. He's 11. He's way back. He's like grand senior master children right now. So,
Yeah.
so the point is that we're just touching points. These are like the Kenpo Minute. It's like it's a wake-up call. Okay, understand. If you don't believe me, don't wait till it happens. I think that's the thing that Marty would say. Find out first. You don't get insurance after the accident. You get it before, and the insurance in this case is knowledge and experience from a trusted,
I want to
respected instructor.
I want to add one little caveat to this that you touched on earlier, and it was an instructor teaching you a lot of different type of self-defense moves and with weapons, how to disarm, how to do everything. Number one, the issues there, is it better than nothing? At times it could be, but then again, it could have consequences that are going to be more fatal than not. And I shouldn't say fatal. I mean, it could end up being fatal. Number two, when you're utilizing empty hand principles to deal with a weapon type environment and situation, the rules are different. It changes things. My strong advice is, and based on where you're studying and what you're doing, you should always look at taking some type of formal weapons type training from a system that is based on weaponry. Filipinos are definitely in that category, Filipino training, and I think it's advisable to do it.
Repeat that. If you want to learn to kick, study a kicking system. If you want to learn just how to punch, train in boxing. But if you want to understand something about the weapons, you go to where, Marty?
You should study with a qualified weapons system, which the Filipino martial arts fit into that category.
I heard Ed Parker say that all the time. I heard him say that. And, he actually encouraged, I remember the story you telling me with Frank about he encouraged Danny Asano to pursue his heritage. He's Filipino. Well, I mean, he's one of the most prominent, well-known, experiencing leading authorities, and he's your teacher. So we got it going there. There's other things that we can deal with. Anyway, I want to say thank you very much, Master Marty. Again,
thank you, Paul.
Great insight. If you need more information, folks, reach out to Marty Zaninovich. And Marty, what's your website again?
I'll have that announced here soon.
Okay, we'll pick it up. So yeah. If you can find him, go to one of his seminars and look forward for one of his books. With no further ado, thank you very much, Paul Casey, the Kenpo Minute. And I want to thank Marty Zaninovich for being here. And we hope that you'll subscribe and like this channel. Thank you so much. Full salute.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
So thank you for watching the Kenpo Minute. We hope you enjoy it. And please come back and visit us again. Thank you very much.